Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to the Model School webinar session. Just now we had a session on the chemistry on solid state. With that, we have completed 99 sessions so far. Now, within few minutes, we are going to have 100 session. This is a fantastic journey so far. Now, I request Mr. Ram Prasad, Principal TSMS Velimala, to give a brief insight into the wonderful journey of Model School webinar. I welcome Mr. Ram Prasad Garu.
Thank you, Venugopal Garu. So it's really my privilege to be part of the team. On the occasion of touching the 100th milestone of webinars, it's my privilege to introduce myself to say a brief about the success. This is A. Ram Prasad, Principal, Telangana Model School, Ramachandrapuram, Sangareddy District. The journey of webinars started on 29th June, and today, the 100th episode is going to be presented in a few minutes. In the COVID-19 scenario, the necessity of continuing the education through digital means was first felt by Telangana Model Schools, and we started to swing into action, and we started the same webinars on 29th June. We are the pioneers in the field among all the education institutions in Telangana. When all the institutions were planning, so we have already executed their plan. I sincerely place my acknowledgement to our additional director and his guidance, vision in conduct of webinars. The joint director, model schools, and various functionaries at state office extended all the requisite support for which the webinars team is indebted to. The webinars launched by additional director on 29 June 2020 continued the successful journey with the help of the principals and the faculty. Almost 2 months of relentless journey led to reach the 100th milestone today. The webinars team, comprising 14 principals, is putting in relentless efforts to present webinars through the channel. Preparation, trial, refinement, trial, final session are the activities of each day for the webinars team. The technical expertise of the principals in conduct of the sessions is only utilized, hence there is no burden on the exchequer. The team comprising Dr. A. Venugopal Reddy, Principal, Vinavanka, Mrs. K. V. Shailaja, Principal, Jinaram, Mrs. BDRS Manjari, Regod, and Mrs. N. Sridevi, Principal, Shankarapetar, Mr. Ram Prasad, Principal, RC Puram, Mrs. P. Sridevi, Principal, Pudur, Mrs. Vijay Lakshmi, Principal, Narsapur, Mrs. P. Sridevi, Principal, Husnabad, Mr. Muhammad Riazuddin, Principal, Jarasangam, Mr. Srikanth, Principal, Jafargad, Mrs. Archana Priyadarshini, Principal, Manakondur, Mrs. Ranjita, Principal, Nidamanur, Mr. Rahman Mujib, Principal, Warangal District, Dr. Pranay, Principal, Bhimdevarapalli. So these are the team of principals who have been working relentlessly to present the webinars of certain standards, which are apt to the model schools. I thank all the principals who are extending support to make the program success. Particularly, the webinars team is working 6 to 8 hours each day to complete the steps which I have stated in my previous statement. We are putting in to present the best and appropriate webinars so that the model school's image is maintained. Our journey will continue. I request all the principals and faculty to extend their requisite support and expertise in conduct of the webinars. I congratulate all the team members of webinar team and all the principals, faculty, and the students of model schools on successful completion of 100 episodes today. Thank you all, and we would like to make the webinars more attractive and more useful with the help of each and everyone. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. So the 100th episode is going to be presented by Mrs. K. Radhika, PGT Political Science from Telangana Model School, Ramachandrapuram, Sangareddy District. So as her principal, it's my privilege to introduce her to the audience. The session which she is going to present today is on fundamental directive principles of state policy. She has a long experience prior to joining model schools. She has served in various corporate and private institutions. She has 8 years experience prior to joining model schools and 7 years model schools. So 15 years journey in the Department of Education is very long. So I over to Mrs. Radhika for her session. Thank you all and good luck, Mrs. Radhika.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you everybody.
Okay.
And thank you, Mrs. Radhika.
Okay, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear students. I am K. Radhika, PGT Political Science, TSMS, RC Puram. My today's topic is Directive Principles of State Policy from second year intermediate, second chapter. Directive Principles of State Policy. Now, today I am going to deal with introduction of directive principles, 3 types of directive principles: socialist principles, Gandhian principles, and liberal principles, and some additional principles which are added by 42nd and 44th Amendment Acts, and fundamental duties. Now, learning objectives. By the end of today's session, the students gain the knowledge about directive principles of state policy and fundamental duties. The students can understand different policies and laws passed in India. They appreciate democratic values. They understand the importance of Indian Constitution. Now, coming to the introductory part of directive principles, before explaining to you people what directive principles are, let me ask you one question. Generally, when you go for voting during elections, what do we look for in a candidate? We generally see whether the candidate is good or bad, his historical, past record, criminal record, and more importantly, we look at their party's manifesto. Now, what do you mean by manifesto? Manifesto contains the list of promises which the party is going to fulfill if it is getting elected. That means if the party comes to power, what all policies they are going to make and what all laws they are going to frame, that manifesto contains all those promises. Now, what is the source of that manifesto? The source of that manifesto is directive principles. That means directive principles are the guidelines or guiding principles to the central and state governments of India, which are to be kept in mind while framing laws and policies. Directive principles are fundamental in governance of the country, and it is the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. That means when any government, it may be central government or state government, when they are framing laws or making laws or policies, they have to apply these directive principles. Now, directive principles are enshrined in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution from Article 35 to Article 51. They were inspired by the Irish Constitution and they are non-justiciable in nature. Now, what do you mean by non-justiciable in nature? You already know that fundamental rights are justiciable in nature. We can approach court if our fundamental rights are violated. But directive principles are non-justiciable in nature. That means the courts cannot force the governments to implement these directive principles or to enforce these directive principles. Now, directive principles aim to establish social and economic democracy through a welfare state. That means directive principles always try to establish welfare state. Directive principles are divided into 3 types: socialist principles, Gandhian principles, and liberal principles. Now, socialist principles. Article 38, Article 39, Article 41, 42, 43, 46, and 47 comes under socialist principles. And socialist principles talk about welfare state. Now, let us learn in detail about all these socialist principles. Article 38. Article 38 states that the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing a social order in which social, economic, and political justice shall be ensured to all the people. That means Article 38 is talking about welfare state. Okay, what do you mean by welfare state? Welfare state is a state which provides facilities like, for example, subsidy on rice is given in India. Okay, subsidy on fertilizers and urea is given to farmers. Free education and midday meals is provided to students. So all such facilities are provided in any welfare state. So Article 38 says the state to make India a welfare state. Okay, and Article 38 also says to secure a social order in which social, economic, and political justice shall be ensured to all the people. So if I would like to describe all the directive principles in one sentence, I can say that all directive principles try to provide justice to the citizens of India. Okay. Now, next one, Article 39 stipulates that the state shall take steps for right to adequate means of livelihood for all citizens. Okay, that means we have right to earn our livelihood. But what about the people who cannot earn their livelihood, like old people, sick people, or handicapped people? Article 39 says the state to provide them adequate means of livelihood. For example, the state government here introduced ASRA pension schemes for the people who are old and handicapped and sick. So another point here is Article 39 stipulates the state to take steps for the equitable distribution of material resources of the community for common good and prevention of concentration of wealth and means of production. Now, this B and C talk about socialist principles. Now, what are socialist principles? Socialist principles are the principles which try to reduce the gap between rich and poor, okay, or which try to reduce the income inequalities. For example, now immediately after independence, our Jawaharlal Nehru, the first prime minister, took steps for abolition of zamindari system and land ceiling laws. So these two laws were made to prevent concentration of wealth in the hands of zamindars. Large area of land was under the control of zamindars. So by using these two laws, Jawaharlal Nehru, the then government tried to acquire the land of zamindars and they redistributed that land to the landless peasants. Okay, so that is an example of socialist principle. And another example here is 14 private banks were nationalized in the year 1969 by the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And the main objective behind the nationalization of these banks were to promote agricultural sector and small scale industries. Like by nationalizing these banks, she wanted to provide more credit facilities to farmers and small scale industrialists. So this is also an example of socialist principle. Okay, then next one. Article 39 also stipulates equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Okay, now suppose there is a man who is working and there is a woman who is working in same place and doing same work. Both of them are putting same effort, but the man is paid more and the woman is paid less. It's certainly an injustice, isn't it? So directive principles won't allow any such injustice. So Article 39 says the state to provide equal pay for equal work for both men and women. So here Equal Remuneration Act 1976 was passed with the main objective to pay equal remuneration to men and women workers and also to prevent gender discrimination. Okay, then preservation of health and strength of workers. Now it is the duty of the state to preserve health and strength of workers. Okay, so national policy on safety, health and environment at workplace was declared on 20th February 2009 and central government health scheme was introduced in India and it covered nearly 35 lakh employees and pensioners so far. Okay, these two are examples that state is providing health and strength of workers. Okay, now next one, protecting childhood and youth against exploitation. Now this point talks about against child exploitation. So, you know, child labor is a kind of exploitation and Factories Act 1948 and Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986 are passed to protect children and youth against exploitation. Now, Article 41 seeks the state to ensure right to work and to establish public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Now, what do you mean by right to work? That means every one of us have a right to engage in some or the other productive work. Nobody can stop us from doing so. Okay, but what about the people who are unemployed? Okay, Article 41 says the state to provide public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Now here, the government has introduced many unemployment insurance schemes, and the state government introduced Telangana Nirudyoga Bhruti for unemployed youth who fall below poverty line, and Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act was passed to ensure right to work in rural areas. So these are examples to say that directive principles are being applied by the central and state governments in India. Now next one, Article 49. It points out that the state shall make provisions for just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. Now, provision for just and humane conditions of work. That means that it is the duty of the employer to provide proper safe conditions for the employers at workplace. Okay, and Article 42 also talks about maternity relief. Now, what do you mean by maternity relief? Any woman cannot leave her newborn baby and attend work, isn't it? After delivery, she cannot leave the small baby, newborn baby, and attend work. And if someone is forcing her to attend work, it is certainly an injustice. So Article 49 says the state to provide maternity relief. So Maternity Benefit Act 2017 was passed to ensure full paid absence from work for 6 months. That means the woman can take maternity leave for 6 months to take care of her newborn baby. Okay, so another point here is Article 43. It directs the state to secure a living wage, a decent standard of life, and social and cultural opportunities for all workers. Okay, so for securing a decent standard of life for the workers, labor laws are made in India. Okay, they ensure fair wages, okay, paid leave, payment during holidays, holidays during festivals, fixed working hours, health benefits. So all these are provided by the state to ensure decent standard of life for workers. Okay, then next one. Next one, Article 46. Or Article 46 states the state, Article 46 makes the state obligatory to promote educational and economic interests of SCs, STs, and other weaker sections of the society and to protect them from social injustice. Now, you already know that reservations are provided in our constitution for promoting social justice. And here Article 46 says the state to provide to promote educational interest to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections. So let me talk about educational interest first. Now, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has started scholarships in India called pre-metric and post-metric scholarship. I think you people are aware about this pre-metric and post-metric scholarships. And these are made for promoting educational interests of SCs and STs. Okay. And for promoting economic interests of SCs, Credit Enhancement Guarantee Scheme is introduced in India for providing financial assistance to scheduled caste entrepreneurs. Okay, and also Pradhan Mantri Adarsh Gram Yojana was started in India to develop backward areas. So these are all examples to say that directive principles are being applied in India by the central and state governments. Okay, next. Next. Okay. Article 47 insists the state to raise the level of nutrition and standard of living of the people and to improve public health. Now, Article 47 says to improve public health. Okay, says the state to improve public health, and it is the duty of the state to improve public health. So, the government, as you are aware of, many nutritional programs have been started by the government, and like ICDS program, that is Integrated Child Development Services, Vitamin A prophylaxis program, special nutrition program, Balwadi nutrition program. Okay, and midday meal scheme, national iodine deficiency disorder control program. All these are major nutritional programs introduced in India. And here the state government, uh, the Department of Women Development and Child Welfare started Arogya Lakshmi to provide maternal nutrition. Okay, so now coming to Gandhian principles, let us discuss about Gandhian principles now. Article 40, Article 43, 46, 47, 48, 48A and 49 comes under Gandhian principles. Let us learn about all these principles in detail now. Now, first one is Article 40. It directs the state to organize village panchayats and endow them with necessary powers and authority, and to enable them to function as units of self-government. And Mahatma Gandhi, here we are talking about Gandhian principle. Mahatma Gandhi always said that India would benefit if villages were functioned by village panchayats. If villages are functioned by village panchayats, then India would definitely benefit. That definitely benefit. That is the idea of Gandhiji, and he also always advocated the idea of establishing village republics, little village republics. Okay, he believed in the principle simple living and high thinking. Okay, so that is why in 1992, the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao has passed 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1992, which fulfilled the establishment of Panchayat Raj institutions in India. Okay, now next one, Article 43. It directs the state to promote cottage industries on an individual and cooperation basis in rural areas. Now, Article 43 talks to promote cottage industries. Now, cottage industries play a very important role in our Indian economy. These small-scale industries can provide employment opportunities to many unemployed youth. Okay, so now for promoting this cottage industries, Khadi and Village Industries Commission was established in India and was given to promote was given the responsibility to promote cottage industries in India. Okay. Now next one, Article 46. It directs the state to promote the educational and economic interests of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections of the society, and to promote them from social injustice and exploitation. And this Article 46 we already discussed in socialist principles. It is even mentioned in Gandhian principle, because Gandhiji always fought against untouchability, and he always talked about the equality of all castes. Okay, so now here I would like to tell one more example that this article is being implemented in India. National Safai Karmacharis Finance and Development Corporation has been started in India, and it promotes economic interests of Safai Karmacharis and scavengers. Okay, now next one is Article 47 directs the state to prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health. Now, drug trafficking and drug addiction has become a major problem in India. Now, intoxicating drinks. What do you mean by intoxicating? Intoxicating means something which causes to lose control over our behavior. Okay. Then here are some of the names of narcotic drugs. Morphine, heroin, hashish, charas, and ganja are some of the dangerous narcotic drugs, and especially youth are getting addicted to these narcotic drugs, and which causes injurious to their health, and even it may cause death to them. Okay, so the government of India enacted the Narcotic Drug and Psychotropic Substance Act of 1985, and it prohibits the sale and production of uh, narcotic drugs in India. Okay, and National Policy of Drug Demand Reduction 2014 was started, and it controls the operations related to narcotic drugs. Okay. Next, Article 48 instructs the state to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. Now, what do you mean by animal husbandry? Animal husbandry means it's a modern method of cattle rearing. Okay, and National Dairy Development Board has started calf rearing program in India. Okay, and this calf rearing program is done through scientific feeding by using scientific or modern methods of cattle rearing. This program has been started, and after this program, the milk production in India has increased considerably. Okay, if you see the dairy progress in last 5 years here in this graph, you can understand the per capita availability of milk was 322 grams per day in 2014-15, but it has increased to 394 grams per day in 2018-19. So it clearly shows that the milk production has increased in India. And another point here, important point here is it also emphasizes on prohibition of slaughter of cows and calves and other milch and draught cattle and to improve their breeds. Here, prohibition of slaughter of cows. Now, what do you mean by slaughter of cows? It is killing of cows for beef. Okay, though our framers of our constitution aspired for prohibition of slaughter of cows, it has not been implemented completely throughout the country so far. Okay, here this is one of the news clip dated January 28, 2017, which clearly said that in this Supreme Court said that it can't pass any order that imposes a total ban on slaughter of cattle, and banning cow slaughter is up to states, and it is except Kerala and West Bengal and some northeastern states, all other states are having their own respective regulations regarding regarding the prohibition of sale and slaughter of cows. Okay, now next one is Article 48A. It directs the state to protect and promote the environment and to safeguard forests and wildlife. Okay, we are facing many environmental problems now, like global warming, pollution, deforestation, okay, depletion of natural resources. So for protection of environment is also a duty or responsibility of state. So environmental laws are made in India. Many environmental laws are made, like Forest Conservation Act 1980, the National Green Tribunal Act 2010, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, and Wildlife Protection Act 1972. These are all examples that environmental laws are being applied in India. Next, Article 49 instructs the state to protect the monuments, places, and objects of artistic or historic interest which are declared to be of national importance. Now, India is a land with beautiful monuments in it. Okay, several hundreds of monuments are there in India. And these monuments are a part and parcel of our Indian cultural heritage. And to protect our culture is one of the fundamental duty. And that is why Article 49 instructs the state to protect monuments and also other places of importance. Okay, so the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act, AMA-SR, was passed in 1958 to provide for preservation of ancient and historical monuments and archaeological sites and remains of national importance. Okay. Now let us come to liberal principles. Article 44, 45, Article 50 and 51 comes under liberal principles. Now let us learn in detail. Now first one, which is very important, is Article 44 directs the state to secure for all citizens a uniform civil code. Now this is the only directive principle which has not been implemented or which has not been applied so far in India. Okay, now let me explain what is Uniform Civil Code. Now generally there are two sets of law in India, criminal law and civil law. Now criminal law deals with the offenses like theft, kidnap, dowry and murder, and civil law deals with the disputes like marriage, divorce, property rights, inheritance and all. And Uniform Criminal Code or Indian Penal Code is applicable to these criminal cases. Okay, and this Uniform Criminal Code is same for all the citizens of India. It's common. Okay, it is applicable to each and every citizen of India, irrespective of religion, caste, region, or anything it may be. Okay, but when we consider civil cases, now personal laws are there in India. Like they are not common or they are not uniform for all. They are not same for all. Hindus have their own personal laws. Muslims have their own personal laws. For example, the Hindu Code Bill 1956 is followed by Hindus. The Sharia law is followed by Muslims. Okay, and here you can see the news clip. It's just last week's news that daughters have equal claim on property. And this judgment was given by Supreme Court and it became very popular. And it is based on Hindu Succession Act 2005. And it is applicable only to Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jainis. Okay, other communities like Christians and Muslims, it's not applicable. That clearly shows that same laws are not applicable to all communities in India. Okay, so far that Uniform Civil Code has not been established in India. Okay, which should be applicable to all communities. And the question here is why? Why Uniform Civil Code has not been established so far? And here there is a debate over this Uniform Civil Code. Okay, is Uniform Civil Code really necessary? For that, the people who are in favor of Uniform Civil Code argue that it paves the way for national integration, simplification of laws, simplification of legal system, establishing secular society, and it also can promote equality and justice. But the people who are against the Uniform Civil Code, they argue that it violates their fundamental rights. Okay, these fundamental rights are violated. Freedom of religion, which is under Article 25, and right to manage their own religious affairs, Article 26. Okay, and unless and until there is an agreement between these two groups, okay, Uniform Civil Code cannot be bought. There is a demand from certain sections of the people nowadays that Uniform Civil Code should be applied in India. But a Uniform Civil Code cannot be brought in place without full consensus. Okay, hope you understood what is Uniform Civil Code. Now, next one is Article 45. It prescribes that the state shall provide free and compulsory education for all the children below 14 years of age within a period of 10 years from the commencement of the Constitution, and also to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. Now, it has been added, this point, this directive principle has been added in fundamental rights now under Article 21A. Okay, providing free and compulsory education to all children of 6 to 14 years. Okay, and it is being implemented in India, and the new education policy extends the age group from 6 to 14 years of mandatory schooling to 3 to 18 years of schooling. Okay, it was declared recently on 29 July 2020. Now, Article 50, it stipulates that the state shall take steps to separate the judiciary from executive in the public services of the state. Now, Article 50 talks about independent judiciary. That means a judiciary should be independent of legislature and executive. Legislature and executive should not influence the judicial decisions. Okay, if independent judiciary is there, then only judiciary can give their judgments in free and fair manner without fear and favor. Okay, okay, it is based on theory of separation of powers. Now, Article 51 states that the state shall promote international peace and security and maintain just and honorable relations between nations. Okay, that means India should always try to maintain peace. Okay, international peace. So that is the duty of India as per Article 51. And you know, India is a member country of UNO and it always strive for maintaining peace, and it always try to maintain friendly relation with all the countries of the world. And Article 51 also says to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations. That means India should always abide by the rules and regulations of international law. It should definitely follow the international law, and also India should not violate the terms of treaty, international treaties, whichever it signed. Okay, so and another point here is India should encourage the settlement of international disputes by arbitration. That means every dispute, international dispute, should be settled by peaceful discussions and deliberations, but not by doing any war. Okay, so now some more principles were added. Some more principles were added through 42nd and 44th Amendment Act to minimize inequalities in income. That is Article 38, Clause 2, and provision of equal justice and free legal aid to the poor. That is Article 39A, and securing participation of workers in the management of industries, Article 43A. Now, let us discuss these principles also. Now, first one is Article 38, Clause 2. It says that the state should minimize income inequalities. Okay, inequalities in income. Now, you know, government has taken many measures to minimize income inequalities. For example, land reforms were brought in place, and redistribution of surplus land to the landless peasants, and social security schemes or practices like insurance schemes or pension schemes. Okay, and also progressive tax system also was bought to minimize income inequalities. Now, what is progressive tax system? Progressive tax system is designed in such a way that the rich pay a higher percentage income taxes than the poor. That means rich people will pay a higher percentage of tax than the poor people. For example, here you can see the table here. The people who are earning up to 2.5 lakh per annum, they are not charged any tax here. Okay, but the people who are paying, who are earning 2.5 lakh to 5 lakhs, they have to pay 5.2% tax rate. And you can observe here, as the income increases, okay, income increases, the tax rate also is increasing. The person who is earning 5 crore and above is paying 42.74% of tax. It's almost like half of their income they are paying as tax. So it shows clearly that the high income groups are paying more tax than the lower income groups. So this progressive tax system reduces the income inequalities at least to some extent. Okay. So another one is Article 39A. It directs the state to provide equal justice and free legal aid to the poor. Okay. It talks about free legal aid to the poor. Like justice should not be denied to any person on grounds of economic disabilities, isn't it? Like that means a poor man should not stop himself to seek justice just because he is unable to pay lawyers' fees. So, Lok Adalats are made in India for providing free legal aid to the poor. Lok Adalat Lok Adalat Legal Services Authority Act 1987 was passed in India, and it is an act to constitute legal services authorities to provide free legal services to the poor and weaker sections of society. That means even poor people can have access to court freely. Okay, and they can seek justice happily. Now, Article 43A directs the state to secure participation of workers in the management of industries. Now, workers' participation in management, is it necessary? Yes, the main objective of workers' participation in management is it gives the sense of importance to workers. Okay, and it gives the workers opportunity for expression. It raises the level of their motivation and increases their involvement in the affairs of the organization and to develop sense of workmanship and creativity. Okay, and the participation of workers in management bill 1990 was passed on May 30, 1990 to provide for specific and meaningful participation of workers in management. Okay. Now, next one, let us come to fundamental duties now. Now, another topic which I am going to discuss now is fundamental duties. Now, what are fundamental duties? Now, fundamental rights and fundamental duties, both of them have very close relationship. Okay, we cannot claim rights without performing our duties. It is unethical to claim rights without performing our duties. Yes, so how important fundamental rights are, that important fundamental duties are. Okay, and the fundamental duties are defined as the moral obligations of all citizens to help promote a spirit of patriotism and to uphold the unity of India. And actually, in the original constitution, there were no fundamental duties, but in 1976, the government of India realized the importance of incorporating fundamental duties in our constitution. Okay, now for that, a committee was formed under the chairmanship of J.B. Kriplani, and based on the recommendations of, a committee was formed under the chairmanship of Sardar Swaran Singh. Okay, and based on the recommendations of Sardar Swaran Singh committee, the fundamental duties were added to the constitution by the 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Now, they are included in Article 51A under Part 4A of our Constitution. Now, originally there were 10 fundamental duties, but they were increased to 11 by 86th Amendment in 2002. Now, let us learn about fundamental duties in detail now. Fundamental duties. First one is, okay, to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. Okay, so respecting the national anthem, national flag and constitution is the first and foremost duty of each and every citizen of India. It is very important. Okay, it is very important, and even the Parliament enacted a law called Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act 1971, which prohibits insults to our national flag, national anthem and constitution. Okay, it is very important to give respect to our national flag, national anthem, and constitution. Okay, you should remember this, children. And next one is to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So we should keep in mind always the noble ideals of our freedom fighters. Now, what are the noble ideals of our freedom fighters? Non-violence is one of the noblest ideal we can say. Okay, and added to that, the spirit of secularism, socialism, equality, the spirit of brotherhood. All these were the noble ideals which our freedom fighters used to follow, and we also should cherish and follow the same noble ideals. Okay, then to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. Now, our India is a country with unity in diversity. Many languages are there, religions, regions, okay, and it is our duty to protect our sovereignty, and also we should maintain unity and integrity of India. Okay. Next one, to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Now, whenever there is a threat to our country, we should be ready to protect our country from enemies. Okay, and we should be ready to do national service to our country. Is it clear? Okay, then next one, to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities, and to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. Now, already I mentioned India is a land of multicultural society. India is a multi-religious society. Okay, and many languages are there, regions are there, and many diversities are also there. So it is our duty actually to promote the spirit of common brotherhood. Okay, all of us should live peacefully and harmoniously in our country. Okay, and another point here mentioned is to renounce the practices derogatory to the dignity of women. That means we should give up such practices, which causes derogatory to the dignity of women, and that means uh, whatever causes to reduce the dignity or respect of women, we should renounce such practices like discrimination towards women, okay, and misbehaving with women. You can see the picture here. Okay, such practices should be renounced. We should give up such practices. Okay, next fundamental duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. India is a land with many cultures. Okay, so many cultures are there, and these cultures are brought to us. We have inherited all these cultures from our ancestors. Okay, and it is our duty to pass this same culture to our future generations. Okay, so we should give value and we should preserve our rich cultural heritage. And to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Okay, now you know there is threat to our environment. Many environmental problems we are facing, like deforestation, global warming, okay, ecological decay, depletion of natural resources. So it is a duty of each and every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Next one, to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. Now, what is humanism? Humanism means rational thinking, thinking logically. We have to get rid of old superstitious beliefs and should start thinking logically and rationally. That means we should develop scientific temper, the spirit of inquiry and reform. That means we should always try to learn new technology. Okay, new science and technology, and we should try to apply them in our daily life and to keep pace with the changing world. Okay. Next one, to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. Now, India always, preaches non-violence, but every now and then we see senseless violence taking place in our country and the destruction of public property also. Okay, and it is a duty of each and every citizen to uh, safeguard public property and to abjure violence. Okay, next one, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of achievement. Now, we always should try to, for excellence. See, whatever you do or whatever work you take up, like you may be a painter or you may be a sports person, you may be a doctor, teacher, or you may be a student. Whatever you try to do, you should try to do it in an excellent manner. Okay, individually or collective activity it may be, you should do it excellently so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of achievement. Okay, if you develop yourself, automatically the country also gets developed. So always you should strive towards excellence. So this is also one of our fundamental duty. Now, to provide educational opportunities by the parent or guardian to his children between the age of 6 to 14 years. This is the last fundamental right which has been added by 86th Amendment Act in 2002. Now, 86th Amendment Act brought two major changes. First one is it included Article 21A in Fundamental Rights, which says that it is the responsibility of the state to provide free education for 6 to 14 years of children. Now, another point also 86th Amendment Act added, that is this fundamental duty. And what this duty says, that it is the duty of parents. It is not only the duty of state, it is the duty of even the parent to provide to provide proper education to their children from 6 to 14 years of age. Okay, is it clear? Now, hope you all understood what these fundamental duties are. Now, let us recapitulate the main points. Now, in this chapter, second chapter of intermediate second year, we learned about 6 fundamental rights. Right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. These 6 fundamental rights we learned in last session. And also in the second chapter, we learned about 3 directive principles, socialist principles, Gandhian principles, and liberal principles. Okay, and we also learned about fundamental duties in this session. Okay, hope you all understood these topics. Now, before ending the session, you please take down these questions to improve your learning. Explain the directive principles of state policy. Which articles of directive principles were added in the Constitution by 42nd and 44th Amendment Act? And what is Uniform Civil Code? Explain. Okay, please take the screenshot of these questions and answer them to improve your learning. Now, here are the references for the topics discussed today, and you can browse them if you need additional information. Okay, these are the references. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Radhika, for a wonderful session. Okay. So you covered the entire directive principles of state policy. So thank you very much. It was a wonderful session. So okay, with this, we have completed 100 sessions. So yes, congratulations to you on taking up 100th episode.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations to you and all the webinar team members also, sir.
Yeah, thank you all the students and the viewers and the webinar team and the principals and the faculty of model schools for
Okay.
making this journey fruitful and successful. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, shall I leave?
Yeah, ma'am, you can leave.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Otherwise, if other principals are there, you can be there, ma'am. Just okay.
Okay, okay.
If it is